This program is sponsored by Tilson Solicitors.
Assalamu alaikum, hello and welcome to the Legal Forum. The Legal Forum is a programme where each week we discuss common topics in layman terms to help guide you with the legal advice that you may need. Breaking down the complex language of law, the Legal Forum will also highlight examples of real cases and scenarios from our experts. As always, please do bear in mind the views and opinions expressed in Legal Forum should be considered for informational purposes only and not case-specific legal advice. All topics are discussed in a generic nature, and it's important that you consult either with a CAB, law centre or solicitor before relying on it. Today's topic will be on European nationals and Brexit. We're delighted to be joined by Sandeep Chandy, an experienced immigration solicitor with over 13 years of experience, who'll be sharing his thoughts and views on our topic today as we look at the current position for European nationals as Brexit has taken place. Well, Sandeep, the minefield that is Brexit and all the situations that have gone with that over the last few years, what's the current position for European nationals as far as Britain is concerned?
Well, Brexit process has started, but the big changes are yet to come. That's the situation as it is. The system we've got in place at the moment has been around for decades. It's been developed over those years. The current European rules are under the European regulations. That's European law in the UK system, and that governs what European nationals can come to the UK, what family members they can bring, how they can then settle in the UK, and eventually, if they want to, become British nationals. Nothing on that front changes. It remains in our system until at least the end of this year, and that's when the big changes are going to kick in.
So as far as time frames are concerned, it literally is next year. So it's kind of going to run, well, should we say, if it ever can run smoothly for the next few months until next year when the rules are going to be looking to change. Is that correct?
Yeah, with the political declaration that was agreed between the UK and the European Union, these rules will carry on until at least the end of the current year, so the 31st of December. Mm-hmm. And that's when, if they haven't been able to agree a trade deal and changes that will take place for European nationals coming into the UK and British nationals going into the EU, that's when a new system will completely replace the current system for European nationals in the UK.
Now, for anybody who's watching today's show and, for instance, has family members or themselves lives in a European Union country, and then obviously as the UK has Brexit's taken place, does it cause any issues because of the freedom of travel that happened under EU rules? Does the freedom of travel thing still exist as far as somebody who is maybe not necessarily born in the EU, but is currently staying there and living there?
Until the end of the year, nothing changes effectively. Okay. These rules carry on applying. Now, European law is, just by nature, much more generous than, for example, our own UK system is. And each other European member state will have its own rules. So mm-hmm. France and Germany will have their own internal rules for their own nationals and people trying to join them from a foreign country. So our system is a lot more generous for European nationals who want to bring their spouse over, for example, or their children over to the UK, or keep them here once they're here. It allows them to also sponsor their parents and grandparents with quite straightforward rules, actually. Requirements are really just proving the relationship between them, proving their identity, so that's a passport or an ID document, and then that they are actually exercising their treaty rights in the UK, which means they're working or they're self-employed, studying or self-sufficient. So the rules are a lot more relaxed for European nationals, and that's been a big part of the Brexit debate. It was about levelling the playing field. So movement within the European Union was very straightforward, and people coming from outside the European Union, whether it be Australia, Canada, India, was a lot tougher.
So all the panic or scaremongering that everybody was hearing, or a lot of people were hearing about, going through different passport controls or getting into ex-European Union states, or as the UK will then be or is now, it's a bit more smooth sailing than was probably maybe first thought of by people.
It is for the time being. It's very difficult to say what's going to happen towards the end of this year because the transitional period is only until the end of the year. If there's no trade deal agreed between the European Union and the UK, there is a very good chance that even, for example, British nationals wanting to travel to Europe will need a visa for that. The European Union are bringing in their own electronic travel authorization process, which is a bit like the visa you need, but even British nationals now need to authorize themselves to travel to the USA. And there's an agreement between the USA and the European Union to do something very similar. But it's very likely it'll be reciprocal. So anything that the EU put in place, Britain will put in place, or the United Kingdom will put in place for people in the European Union want to come and visit us. So it might not be quite as easy to go on a quick holiday, whether it be a week or a month or longer than that, as it has been after 31st of this year, 31st of December this year.
Do you predict, obviously I mean, obviously not having the powers of seeing into the future, but do you see lots of law changes, or do you see, obviously for smooth sailing for all of the European, I mean, nobody wants it to be hugely problematic for ex-European Union states, surely, I would imagine.
This is where politics come into play.
Yeah.
I mean, immigration, if you compare European Union immigration into the United Kingdom compared to the other parts of the world, it's been about 50-50. Sometimes it's overtaken immigration from other countries outside of the European Union, and sometimes it's been slightly less. But this will start leveling the playing field. So these new rules that will kick in, whatever the agreements are with the European Union, the new system, the new rules that will kick in after that will level the playing field so that everyone, whether you're within the European Union or outside, you'll be playing by the same rules.
Now, I've been reading a bit about kind of the scaremongering factors that I've mentioned there, and I've got family members who live in a European Union country, and people have been saying that they need to spend thousands of pounds now to get certain forms filled in so they can stay there and still have certain tax implications and rely on their pension that they got from the UK government. So, but at this stage, all of that is non-factual, I would imagine.
Certainly. The old system, the effectively is no change at the moment to the old system whatsoever. So the rules we've had in place, the current document starts from 2006, those rules haven't changed whatsoever. That process carries on side by side with the new settled status scheme the government brought out when the Brexit process has started, which is all based online, and you can use your mobile phone to scan your passport or your ID document, and you can effectively complete the application on your phone or online and confirm your status. So the two systems run side by side, whether you use the old style system with a paper form. You have to pay for the privilege. It's a £65 fee for that. But until the end of this year, at the very least, you can use either system at the moment.
Do you see it dragging on any longer, like we had obviously with Brexit? And we were supposed to leave last year in May, and then it went on in October, and now obviously it's happened eventually. Do you see any, with the European Union, any long drawn out negotiations still, or does Britain have to be finished with its negotiations by a time frame?
I think the government's intention is that they don't want to extend the transitional period until anywhere beyond the end of this year. I think in all likelihood, the actual negotiations for a trade agreement, for the future relationship, for what the future would even European immigration and travel is going to look like is going to take a lot longer than that. So my prediction is this transitional period will extend to at least the end of next year. So you're talking about end of 2021. So it's unlikely there'll be a lot for people to worry about on the immigration front. But as with everything in politics, we can never say. You can never say,
exactly. Now, you've got 13 years of experience in this field. How does it work for you to give advice to your clients going forward? I mean, when the government or the law changes are about to be made, or generally about to happen, how much knowledge do you have to suddenly take in and take on board to help people with the changes that are about to take place? Do they give you kind of a heads up of what's going to happen and how to deal with it?
New rules are released publicly, so there's usually a period in which you get to learn about the new changes coming in, and then dates by which they actually kick in. But they do surprise you. Even on the European side, they make changes to the regulations regularly. They'll change their policy making, so they'll act a certain way in one case on one particular day, and without anything actually having changed in the law, another application, a situation which was identical is decided completely differently, and you've got to react to them as they change, as they come up like that.
So, for instance, if somebody is living in the United Kingdom and has all the visas and all the applications they need to be here, they may have another member of their family who's a European or EU national. How easy is it for them to say come to the UK then, whether it's a spouse, a child, or somebody within their family domain? How easy is it currently? Obviously, the rules are the same as you said, but going forward, do you see any problems with family members coming over to the United Kingdom? Or, well, again, we don't know, do we?
With the current rules, it's still very straightforward, at least the end of this year. European nationals in either one of the 28 member countries, which at the moment the UK is part of, can freely travel to other European countries. There's no question on that. When it comes to them bringing their own European family members, so their European partner, their European child, their European parents or relatives, again, there's no restriction on that. Things change a little bit when you're talking about a foreign national partner. So a partner, for example, from India or Thailand or China. That's where the current rules are still very generous. The requirements really are only demonstrating who you are, so your identity, your relationship to that person. It comes in the form of marriage certificate, birth certificate. Sometimes DNA testing proves a relationship where you can't otherwise prove it immediately. And then proving that the European national themselves is exercising their rights to be here as a worker or someone who's self-employed, studying or self-sufficient. So as things stand, still the European rules are very, very generous compared to the UK system, but that is what we're looking forward to, the changes that are going to come in, and that will start leveling the playing field. So there will be no difference for someone coming from a completely third country or someone moving into the UK from a European Union. It'll be the same for everyone.
What are you experiencing currently? What's the kind of general questions you're being asked by your clients who come to speak to you about situations that they're trying to overcome and trying to help themselves with?
On this particular topic, European nationals themselves are finding it fairly straightforward to use a new system. They can go online, they can apply to confirm their own status. If they've been here for 5 years, they've worked or been self-employed or studied that period, they'll get confirmed. Normally they will get confirmation that they've got their settled status, they've got nothing more to do. And settled status is just a new term. It's the same as someone who's got indefinite leave to remain in the UK. They're here forever. The only way you'd ever lose that is if you leave the UK for a 2-year period and you don't return, that you lose that right to come and go. But it's when they are trying to bring their family members or keep their family members here who are foreign nationals, that's where the trouble starts. The rules, like I said, there's only 3 main requirements: your identity, your relationship, and the European nationals work here. But the Home Office and the embassies are quite stringent with those requirements, and they will hold them to a higher standard. They will question relationships, they will question whether work is genuine. And we do have a lot of cases at the moment where the Home Office are making refusal decisions, and then you've got to argue against those and try and overturn them.
With travel, once you've been here in the United Kingdom, say for instance, as under the EU status and the flag, travel to, for instance, like we talked about earlier on, the United States, does that become, and has that become any more problematic since Brexit has occurred?
No, not at the moment. And I think the special relationship the UK is supposed to have with the USA, I think when Brexit is completely finished and all the European rules are finished in our system, certain countries are maybe even easier to travel to because we'll put new arrangements in place. At the moment, we've been confined to European rules. Not at the moment, but time will tell whether things become tougher once we fully leave.
I think with the last, as we were speaking about prior to the show today, like the last 2-3 years, it's been on the front pages of all the papers. It's been the first thing that we see and hear about in our news items every day, practically. Yeah. And of course, Brexit, 31st of January, been done, and of course happened very quickly in the end. Going forward, the kind of questions that I wanted to ask. After Brexit, what will the next system be like, do you think? How simple to use, how beneficial will it be for people, do you think?
Well, we've got a new government, a completely new government with a completely new cabinet. White paper's been published. They've made it clear they want to bring in a brand new immigration system. There's a lot of talk about a new points-based system. We've discussed before, we've had a points-based system for a number of years. It's just that it's not designed well. It's not designed to bring big numbers of people into the UK. But the government have made it clear they'll set out 3 specific main targeted categories. One will be exceptional talent and investment. So there's people coming in under the current Tier 1 programme, which is to bring money into the UK to invest and start a business in the UK. Second category, which there's been some changes in the news just recently, is for skilled workers, and there's talk now about reducing the minimum salary from 30,000 to something a bit lower than that to allow workers to come in where they needed, for example, in the NHS and particular sectors. And then the third strand the government are talking about is sector-based workers, so in specific fields. And they've got a migration advisory committee to give them advice about which sectors need workers at a particular time. But that's a very short-term category, and that's one they're saying will never lead to settlement. So it's for workers to come for a very short period, 6 months or a year at a time. That's what the shape is going to look like. They haven't said at the moment, the government, is what the family rules will look like. We know what they're like at the moment for European nationals. We know what they're like at the moment for foreign nationals. But we don't know yet what they're planning to change on that front. And that's a big part of the immigration system when you want to bring your husband or wife to join you here, or your children to come over, or other relatives. There's a big question mark on that front at the moment.
A silly little question, but it's a question that I get asked a lot about when we talk about these shows, online and with social media. somebody who either came here originally under a visa but then has a British passport in whatever guise, which on the front of it is part of the European Union, will everybody need to change their passport to the United Kingdom passport? Is that something, or do you have the time span of your current passport to run out before you need to change it?
Well, there's a lot of talk about going back to the old blue passports we used to have. So we'll see what happens there. I think the expectation is that anyone who has a European Union passport at the moment can carry on keeping it and use it until it expires. But that European Union citizenship at the front of the passport will no longer have any meaning. So it won't be free travel to European countries. You won't be able to go there as a British national, settle there as you could do at the moment.
But with the way that we travel through airports and train terminals these days, and you hold your passport over the scanner. So does that system, obviously we're being, as previously a member of the European Union, does that system become null and void until such rules have been laid down, should we say?
Well, that's part of the negotiation that's still continuing, part of the real Brexit deal. Brexit's happened effectively in name only at the moment. There's still a deal to do. I think in the end, the governments between themselves will agree that some of those arrangements have to stay in place. They still want to share information when it comes to security and criminality. They want to make sure that they can share information and have shared systems there. So I think a lot of those things will carry on as they are now, and nothing will change on that front.
But do you predict, hopefully, a very smooth transition and a future going forward over the next year or 18 months as everything beds in? Or do you think it's going to be a bit of a journey that we have to go through, or do you think it's going to be hopefully smooth sailing?
It is very difficult to predict. I think our own government will be quite cautious when we're talking about the topic of immigration. I think they'll keep things as relaxed as they can and keep this current system going for as long as they can until arrangements are in place, which is why I expect that the current system will stay in place till the end of at least next year, which was originally suggested as in a period of time, but that they'll need to agree arrangements with the European for the longer term. I think we'll be quite cautious. I hope we're going to be quite cautious. And I think by the end of 2021, it's some sort of time scale about when we may have an actual deal which will conclude everything for Brexit.
So do you think the transition will be a smooth transition as we get all the details kind of finally arranged, or do you see some problems ahead with your solicitor's hat on, should we say?
I think on the topic of immigration, our government will be quite cautious, and they'll keep the current system in place as long as they can to give certainty to individuals and people applying and moving their families around. My expectation is that they will extend the transition period, and these rules will carry on for people until the end of next year. And I think that's the sort of timescale in which they may come to some sort of deal, a longer term deal with the European Union, and that will make certain what's going to happen for the future.
Now, is there any, or are there, shall I say, any hints and tips that you can give for anybody who's watching today's shows, just to get ready for anything in the future, or just to have the paperwork in, at least in one area where they know everything is? Is there anything, a bit of advice that you can give anybody for what's still to come?
I think, as always, keep records. I think what we have with a lot of clients, they'll come to us and we've got something to deal with or an application to make, and they throw a lot of, we're a paperless society now, people throw a lot of things away. But just because we have become paperless doesn't mean that everything's always available online. You can't always access statements and download documents. So keep your records. If you get a paper record and there's no other way of accessing that record, make sure you keep it, especially when it comes to people's employment record. That's where we sometimes do have some trouble gathering evidence and putting it forward to the Home Office.
And if they've managed to obtain that by, say, printing it off at home on their own printer, obviously it's not come from the particular printer that it's sent from in an office or a company, is that still giving you some sort of backup that will be helpful?
Does, yeah. The Home Office's own systems are now changed, so they are accepting electronic documents. All the processes now allow you to scan documents, so they don't need to see originals. So you don't need to run down to the post office anymore. It's all online.
That seems a lot more easier, hopefully, going forward for everybody. Well, Sandeep, thank you very much, as always. Great insights into what's to come, of course, for lots of people who are watching. Well, as always, our time has got away from us. I'd like to thank Sandeep Charney for the expert advice on today's show, and who shared his experience and viewpoints on this status of the European nationals following Brexit. We must stress, as we always do, the views and opinions expressed in Legal Forum should be considered for informational purposes only and not case-specific legal advice. All topics are discussed in a generic nature, and it's important that you consult with either a CAB, law centre or a solicitor before relying on it. If you'd like to find out more about today's topic or any of the topics we've discussed in the series, then please do get in touch and email us at legalforum@islamchannel.tv. Or if you'd like to watch any of our shows, you can view them online at www.islamchannel.tv. Thanks for watching and see you next week. Assalamu alaikum.
This program is sponsored by Tilson Solicitors.